What's up, everyone? Welcome to the FanDuel PGA Q&A for this week. I'm your host, Brandon Gdula. I'm the managing editor over at numberFire.com. I'll be talking about the field, the betting odds on FanDuel Sportsbook, the daily fantasy slate on FanDuel, my win simulation model, and whatever else you would like, because this is a Q&A format. So before I get into everything, the field, the course, and everything else, be sure to hit up the comment section on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, or Twitch if you do have questions for this week's event. This week we have the Memorial Tournament at Muirfield Village. Last year, Muirfield Village hosted two PGA Tour events back-to-back. It was kind of wild. We had the workday and then the Memorial. And kind of concurrent with that, they were working on some renovations, which are going to play a factor for this year. How much they will affect things is hard to say always. And so we kind of have to figure out how we're going to play the renovation angle with all the data we have historically. Just kind of as a spoiler alert, I'm not going to overreact too much because you can renovate a course, but it's not going to be entirely drastically different where golfers were going to kind of get a brand new test. And these are the best in the world. So I think they'll be able to figure it out, especially if they're already familiar with the setup. But I want to break down the field because that's always super important to figure out who's here and what that means for our betting card and for our daily fantasy lineups. So for the Memorial, we have Jon Rahm listed at 10-1 on FanDuel Sportsbook. He is the favorite, followed by Bryson DeChambeau at 14-1, same as Rory McIlroy, Collin Morikawa, Jordan Spieth, Justin Thomas, Victor Hovland. That's a pretty strong quartet there. At 16-1, Patrick Cantlay, Xander Schauffele, both 20-1. Kind of lump them together. They played together at the Zurich, but Xander sliding down a little bit, Cantlay a little bit himself, but Hideki 22-1, Tony Finau 27-1. So those are the golfers we have at 30-1 or shorter. That's a pretty stout top of the board, and that's going to affect how we approach things from a betting standpoint, but also how we build our daily fantasy lineups. Jumping over here to the official World Golf Rankings, we see that this event has a strength of field of 606. You can kind of say what you want about the strength of field measurements from the official World Golf Rankings, but just for some context, sorted this year's events by the toughest strength of field. The PGA Championship was a 916. Then we have the Players, the Masters, so two majors and a borderline major, the WGC events, and then pretty much right after that, we would get the Memorial slotting in right after the Genesis, so on par with a field like that. And in my research, looking at optimal lineups in the past on FanDuel, whenever we have tougher events from a strength of field standpoint, you want to be a little bit cautious about punting. We don't see value plays necessarily have the juice to overcome that sheer number of great golfers at the top, which is generally how field strength, for the official World Golf Rankings, it's kind of a measure of how many of the best golfers are in the field. And so I want to caution that for this week first, long shots probably not going to be the types of golfers that I'm targeting. I'm going to be looking for a more balanced approach for my PGA lineups and also for my betting card. Jumping back over here to the odds, yes, it's really enticing to just chase Jon Rahm at 10-1 or go after Bryson or Rory or all these guys, but you might get better value a little bit lower down the card. So I'll break down my actual win simulations in just a second, but I do want to stick with the course now before we dig into that. I'm going to stick with Data Golf here, which is, as you can see, all these tabs. Data Golf has a lot of good information to help us get acclimated, get up to speed for each and every week on the PGA Tour. I like to look at this tool kind of first and foremost each and every week. What drives variation in scores at a particular course, and how does that compare to the PGA Tour average? So this week, the event average at Muirfield, we get about 39% of the scoring variation explained by strokes gained approach, just 12% off the tee, despite being a longer course, and they did add length to it. But that's down from 15% as a PGA Tour average, and we actually see strokes gained around the green get bumped up. So it's about 56% of the scoring variation described by irons and wedges. It's usually about 49%. So kind of a unique setup where we see maybe not driver be the most important, but also not the putter. And some courses you kind of just bomb it and putt well. This is not really that type of setup based on this tool here. And we can also kind of see a little bit of that with this course fit tool. Despite being a long course, and again, there are renovations, they did add length, so it's going to play a little bit differently. I'll break that down in just 1 second. But driving accuracy jumps out as more important here, more predictive of who fares well at Muirfield Village than we have at the average PGA Tour course. Distance gets a little bit mitigated. Approach, though, does outperform the PGA Tour average by a hair, and around the green as well, with a little bit of a de-emphasis on putting. So, again, a little bit of a unique setup overall. You don't get a whole lot of long bent grass courses with small greens, so Muirfield Village, a little bit unique from that standpoint. And as always, Data Golf's course fit tool does show who they anticipate to fit the course best, not necessarily from a standpoint of who's done the best here, which you can find in various places, but based on their statistical profiles, who gets the biggest boost. So Brendan Todd gets the biggest boost, 0.32 strokes per round expected. That is pretty substantial, especially for a golfer who is pretty strong already. Brendan Todd was 100 to 1 on FanDuel Sportsbook, now 90 to 1. I like Brandon Todd from a daily fantasy standpoint, also from a betting standpoint, although probably not going to be hammering the 90 to 1 range too much for outrights, probably more for top 10s, top 20s, things like that. Corey Connors, Colin Morikawa, Russell Henley, these guys who aren't long off the tee but are accurate, those are the types of golfers who seem to be getting the big boost. Matt Kuchar as well, another name. Kevin Streelman. These are all golfers who I have a lot of interest in from a daily fantasy standpoint, but also a betting standpoint for this week. I alluded to some renovations since last year. Again, we had 2 events at Muirfield Village last year. They did change a lot. So I'm going to go over to the GC SAA tournament fact sheet, which is always just a great resource to get kind of the snapshot of what to expect. It shows things like what type of greens there are, average green size for anyone who doesn't know. The average number here is about 6,000. So these are small greens. They took about 4 acres of fairway out, added some rough based on the renovations, took out a few bunkers, but redid all of them. The water numbers didn't change from what we've seen last year, but this is interesting. They rebuilt, resodded all 18 greens, relocated several greens, made contour changes on most of them, rebuilt the bunkers, leveled and seeded some tees, relocated several tees, renovated and seeded fairways. So that's kind of drastic, especially from a putting standpoint. If all the greens play differently, is that going to mean that golfers who putted well here are going to struggle, or does it kind of give a leg up for golfers who just have played here a lot and still know how to navigate? That's always hard to say. For me, it's always important not to put too much emphasis on course history anyway, especially if you're not factoring in what type of form someone was in. Matt Kuchar comes to mind. He won here in 2013. He's not the same golfer right now as he was, but I still think the current stats for him are good enough, plus that course history, to be interesting for this week. So I think I kind of covered what I'm looking for at Muirfield Village, but I want to break down my key stats for this week, the things that I'm looking at most. For me, it's going to be strokes gained approach, number one. Always we see how much of the scoring is explained by strokes gained approach. At Muirfield Village, almost 39%. We always see it. The most important tee to green stat, usually putting, does outweigh it. Just kind of explains, the best putters do separate each and every week. But approach number one for me, strokes gained around the green, number two, which is usually not a key stat, but I do think there's enough credence to put a lot of weight into strokes gained around the green. Driving accuracy to some degree, strokes gained putting on bent grass would be up there. And then also birdie or better rate. I would imagine this plays a little bit tougher than some of the scores that we have seen in recent years. Jon Rahm won at 9 under. We've seen lots of double-digit scores in years past, so probably going to play a little bit tougher, but always from a daily fantasy standpoint, you want to be looking at things like birdie or better rate for our lineups. Again, if you guys have any questions, just hit up the comment section on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, or Twitch. I can break down some, lineup construction thoughts I have for this week. The main takeaway there is going to be a little bit more balanced than a top heavy approach. I can dig more into the course, anything like that. So if you have questions, just hit up the YouTube chat. That's easiest for me, but Facebook, Twitter, or Twitch as well. I'm going to jump over now to my spreadsheet because I think I covered everything to this point. Don't want to pull that up yet. That's my win simulations. I'm going to pull up this finder here and look at the top 5 for this week from a daily fantasy standpoint, from a FanDuel salary standpoint. Really hard to kind of go wrong with any of these golfers from a process standpoint, but where you'll see it come into effect is if you're spending up for Jon Rahm at 12.3, you're going to be in that 8,000 range a good bit, and that is kind of hard to get excited about. There are some names down there who do have appeal, but overall, I think we can jump down a tier from these 5 names and feel pretty good. But Jon Rahm does rate out as the most likely golfer to win this based on my simulations, but only 6% for him, which is quite low. It's far from a guarantee. It's nothing like, usually you can see, double that number in a weak field if you have someone like Jon Rahm, but that's not what this is. So gives more credence to differentiating from the chalk. Jordan Spieth, 4.3% in my model. Bryson DeChambeau, Rory, both sub 3%, primarily because the course setup. If driving distance winds up being more important at Muirfield Village because of the renovations than it typically has been, then Bryson and Rory won't be as penalized. But their wedge play, you can see here, 65th percentile and 63rd percentile, respectively, for those two. Now, to clarify, those numbers come from the past calendar year. I adjust them all for field strength and weight for recency. So that's where those numbers are coming from. But those aren't bad. They're definitely not red flag level, not bottom 25th percentile, anything like that. But that's not really what you want to see. And then for Bryson, the hardest part is always the approach play doesn't rate out that well. He does gain more strokes off the tee than just about anybody. So makes it hard to gain strokes with your approach if you're gaining strokes off the tee. But for that reason, I'm not having a ton of interest in either Bryson or Rory because of the wedges and because I'm putting a lot of emphasis on that this week. You can see the other golfers, JT, the best wedge player in the field according to my database here, which again, adjusts for field strength, which I think is really important. Jordan Spieth and Jon Rahm both 90th percentile or better. One issue for most of these golfers is this, fairways gain number, which is over the past 100 rounds from Fantasy National. Not a whole lot of great stuff there aside from Jon Rahm, who, despite being really long, is also pretty accurate. So that's intriguing. He's a good bent grass putter. I can't make a case against Jon Rahm from a process standpoint. It's more of a lineup construction standpoint for me this week with Rahm. No arguments against any of these guys, but I do think we have some better names just below them, specifically Colin Morikawa and Xander Schauffele. I think these are the two best plays at a salary of 11,000 or higher. Xander rates out really well in my win simulation model, which is not because I'm a Xander fan. It's just because you look at all this. He's the best adjusted golfer in the field, weighted for field strength and recency over the past year, better than even Jon Rahm. So it's gonna be we're gonna see Xander rate out well in a win simulation model if that's the input. So he doesn't do anything poorly. He's not the most accurate driver, but he's about field average in that 50th percentile. Good on bent grass. There's not a whole lot to dislike about Xander. His number is falling to 20-1. Well, falling because he typically would have been about in that 16. He probably would have been that 16 bucket with Morikawa and the others, but hasn't converted on the win. I don't think that's anything to worry about personally. So for me, Xander is a top tier DFS play, but Collin Morikawa, this should set up really well for him from a ball striking standpoint. 99th percentile adjusted strokes gained approach, 97th percentile in fairways gained. We know he's going to gain birdies. The one question mark is the around the green and the short game with the putter, but the putting has really turned around for the most part. We've seen him have high-end spike weeks, which is really all you can ask for. It's great to gain 1 or 2 strokes per event consistently. It's another if you can kind of hit a high end, which you dig back through, and Morikawa does have that ability, which is really, really appealing. The around the green play, not particularly great, but compare this to Rory, for example, which I can do side by side here. Morikawa, basically the same golfer, a little bit better over the past year. Very similar overall, better iron play for Morikawa, slightly worse off the tee, but again, we kind of are looking for that fairway number rather than just the sheer distance. So from that standpoint, I think Morikawa, great play, a little bit better of a number from a FanDuel salary standpoint, but also from a FanDuel Sportsbook standpoint as well. I'll just open this up to my full spreadsheet. I know it's a lot to look at, which is why I try to limit it to just the Finder when I have some head-to-head questions, things like that. But I know it's a lot. But what we kind of see here is you have a great field. You're going to like a lot of the names at the top, which I do, which my model does. If I combine like the adjusted stroke gain numbers and my assumed statistical fit, it's going to be lots of good names at the top, rating out really well. I don't really have an issue with hardly any of these golfers, but Morikawa, Xander, Corey Connors, Matt, I got to change it in my spreadsheet, Matt Fitzpatrick, and Louis Westhuizen, kind of jumping out to me as the best plays at the top of the field. Louis, Connors, and Fitzpatrick, just in that low to mid 10,000 range, gives you a lot more flexibility to build around golfers like that, as opposed to your Spieths, Brysons, Rorys. I understand the win equity is a bit different, but honestly, for me, Connors and Fitzpatrick somehow rating out better than Rory and Bryson, which feels wrong, but based on course fit and based on the just overall adjusted strokes gain data, which I don't tinker with, I don't kind of make it. I don't look at this and say, oh, Rory has to be more likely to win than Matt Fitzpatrick. The data kind of says otherwise, and that's something that we can take advantage of. So I think this 10,000 range gives us a lot of options to build around this week on FanDuel. Same for the 9,000 range to some degree. I would be interested in Joaquin Niemann a little bit. He is a problem around the greens, 24th percentile there. Cam Smith, not that accurate, so I am kind of concerned. But if it's about heavy bunkering, if it's about getting up and down, I feel pretty good with him because of the short game rating out. 87th percentile or better in putting in around the green over the past year. Keegan Bradley, I can actually kind of highlight him because it's really appealing. Kevin Stroman as well. These guys should be highlighted for me, but the point remains, I still like them, even though I forgot to highlight them in my spreadsheet. So I'll pull up Keegan and Kevin Stroman. Again, if anyone's curious as to any other head-to-heads or 3-person matchups, just let me know in the YouTube chat, and I will pull them up in the Finder. But for now, Bradley and Kevin Stroman in the Finder. So the win equity, the win simulation model is not super high on them, but it's not super low either, about 1% likely. Just positive golfers long-term over the past year, adjusted for field strength and recency. You like to see that. And for both of them, just really good ball striking, which is super appealing. For Stroman, the short game struggles are, the short game would be approach or around the green and putting. Kind of struggles with both, but isn't quite as bad as Keegan, who is terrible with the putter, but better around the green. So, Probably won't be as bad with the putting as Keegan, but Keegan's also surprisingly his best or like least worst on bent grass. So I think Keegan Bradley makes a lot of sense for this week at a salary of 9,700. And we know what the upside can be whenever he does putt well. So Keegan Bragley, still relevant. Kevin Stroman, relevant as well. But we do have kind of options all along the 9,000 range, kind of from that mid to upper tier. So speaks again to that balanced lineup, looking pretty solid. But in the low 9,000 too, we have a few names. For me, Matt Wallace at 9,300. Russell Henley really kind of stands out from an odds standpoint relative to his salary. Cam Tringali, Brendan Todd, Siwoo Kim if he's healthy. Lots of options here. Chris Kirk, another name for me at 8,700. Kirk has some question marks, but this around the green number, really good. The ball striking, pretty strong for the salary. The putting, not quite so great, but should hit fairways and be kind of neutral with the putter on bent grass, which I'm okay with for a salary of 8,700. But we do kind of really get light on options down in this 8,000 range. I'm always in on Taylor Gooch, Doug Gim. These guys have appeal, but I wouldn't recommend a lot of exposure to any of them, frankly, because this is such a tough field. I know the field's a little shorter, a little smaller, but I think you can build a great lineup from just about 9,000 and above, maybe dip down for one of these golfers like a Chris Kirk, but you can really build some good lineups saying, I'm not gonna force in Rahm, I'm not gonna force in Spieth. I'm gonna take some salary savings on someone like Xander, Tony Finau, even Patrick Reed. You want to talk about a course where short game might matter? Patrick Reed coming in at 10-6 on FanDuel. That's really interesting, and we know Patrick Reed has the ability to go out and win, especially in a tough field. So Patrick Reed, I would say a really strong tournament play on FanDuel for the week. Also a pretty solid betting value at 34-1. I wouldn't dislike that at all. I'll jump over now to my win simulations and just show you guys the most likely winners, whether my models think that they're a good value at their current odds at FanDuel Sportsbook. John Rahm rating out the most likely to win, but only 6%, which is quite low for a favorite. Not high enough for me to recommend him at 10-1. I wouldn't say actively fade him, but we have so many other golfers at odds that are better just below him. So I'm out on John Rahm. I would rather take Xander, who's almost as likely to win at double the number. The model shows him as the best betting value of the week. That's very common for me, so take that with a grain of salt. But again, this isn't just because I like Xander. It's because he's really good. And I think that the fact that he hasn't closed things out for a while is starting to weigh down those odds. JT, Hovland, Spieth kind of be bucketed in that 4% tier. Not showing much value, showing negative value at their 16-1 numbers on FanDuel Sportsbook. But, if you start your betting card here, I'm okay with it. I would be most inclined, honestly, with Morikawa, despite the fact that he is a question mark around the green. That could be silly. I could be saying, why didn't I just bet JT if I'm betting anyone there? But for me, I think Morikawa makes a ton of sense. Instead, I'm probably more likely to skip over that 16 range. I'm still undecided on Xander, even though there's betting value there. But Corey Connors, Matt Fitzpatrick in that, the 33-1 numbers, my model showing some expected value on him, or on both of them actually, which is really appealing. I might just start my betting card there. And again, these guys are going to be staples in my FanDuel lineups for the week. Tony Finau, I have interest in. He's actually done well at Muirfield Village, despite the fact that he's really long, and that's not historically what the data shows is most important. But I think Finau, 27-1, very much in play. 10-8 on FanDuel. In the conversation for a cash game lineup, head-to-head, and especially a tournament, if this is a week he gets it done, which I know we've said 1,000 times before. Some other longer shots who I'm probably not targeting long shots for outrights. but Brendan Todd, Cam Tringali, Russell Henley, that trio there, showing either slightly negative or positive betting value at their current numbers outright. For top 10s, top 20s, I think they make a lot of sense. I'm starting to do a lot more top 10s and top 20s, so it's not all boom or bust for me on my betting cards. But those are the golfers I think I'm going to be targeting most for this week for top 10s, top 20s. Let's see if anyone else jumps out who I kind of overlooked. Taylor Gooch, Siwoo Kim. Taylor Gooch for top 20 sounds pretty strong because he does everything well. Louis Reed, I think, would be in the conversation for me for outrights at this point. So lots of good options. And whenever that's the case, the data says be different. We're going to have a lot of ways to pivot this week from the chalk, whoever that is, whether it's Jordan Spieth. We'll get more of an idea closer to Thursday. But I think this is going to be a great week. It's going to be exciting because we have so many golfers at the top of the field who are really good. And because of that, it's going to be a great game theory week for us on FanDuel, just by being okay to be different. That is all I have for today. I'm going to bring on everyone's favorite, Jim Sonis. He's gonna be getting ready to talk about this evening's MLB slate. Jim, you look confused. Is it because I complimented you?
No, as you said, everyone. Have you read Twitter? Like, do you know that
I don't read Twitter. I don't read Twitter.
There's no consensus on Twitter, so you shouldn't read Twitter. That's for the best. I would disagree with the everyone assertion. I appreciate it, but like, you're very wrong. So I'll take that. But also, I have to take some sort of umbrage with you talking about Patrick Reed right when I logged in, because you were gone last week, but I spent a good chunk of the Heat Check, our DFS podcast, talking about how I thought Patrick Reed was awesome because it was an event where driving didn't matter as much. It was like, oh, Patrick Reed, amazing everywhere else. What could go wrong with loving Patrick Reed for this week? And then he missed the cut. So you could have at least warned me that you were going to be saying good things about him, because the scars are still there. And I feel like in your return from vacation, you should try to be gentler to me in my fragile state.
Well, I didn't talk about Patrick Reed too much last week. I liked him.
I did.
I know. But had I known that, I would have probably not have liked him so much. I think this week is Patrick Reed week. I'm warming up to him a lot.
So when he won earlier this year, it was after a missed cut, right?
Yep.
So he's guaranteed to win this week because I was on him last week, which forced him to miss the cut. That's the logic here, right?
I mean, yeah. So his win before that, he was 51st the week before.
So if he finishes top 50, you avoid Patrick Reed at all costs. If he finishes at 50 or 50th or worse, it's 100% Patrick Reed, right? Math.
Yeah, I need to figure out how many winners just missed the cut than their last start, because I feel like it's probably a much higher rate than we would think. At least relative to
Xander missed the cut 2 weeks ago, so Xander and Patrick Reed gonna split the trophy in half and do it that way. How about that?
I feel like if for Xander's next win, it's going to be some sort of weather delay that lasts into Wednesday, and they're it's going to be co-winners. That would be the story of all time.
It'd be amazing. I'm hoping for it. I'm pulling for it. Pulling for you, despite your degradation of my mental health with the Patrick Reed talk. But Brandon, I appreciate it, and have a good rest of your week. Welcome back.
It's good to be back. I'm ready to learn how to win on this MLB slate.
Good luck with that. Let's talk about it, though, and get you set for tonight's slate. It is a 14-game main slate for tonight, so a lot of choices. And honestly, to me, everything for this slate revolves around the mid-range of pitcher, because you do have Tyler Glasnow. Glasnow, great. I love Glasnow. We've used him a lot so far this year. And I think that Glasnow is viable for tonight, someone I'm willing to use, but to me, the big appeal on this slate is the mid-range. That is going to be Chris Bassett and Robbie Ray. I think both those guys are tremendous options for this slate. Let's pull up their numbers here and show you why I like both them. Bassett is facing the Mariners, high strikeout team, 25% strikeout rate versus righties. He has a 30% strikeout rate over his past 7 starts. He's been using a slider more in that time. 7 starts, 30% strikeout rate, 3% walk rate, 31% hard hit rate allowed. He's been tremendous. So I love Chris Bassett at $93. Worked out well for us last week, going back to the well once again this week. The reason I'm on Robbie Ray is I hate safety. I hate fun. I like the risk, like the sweat a little bit, but Robbie Ray has upside. 33% strikeout rate over his past 5 starts with his sliders going back up, 3% walk rate. He is still letting up a lot of hard contact and a lot of fly balls. So Robbie Ray could get absolutely torpedoed, and it would not surprise me in the least. That's still within his range of outcomes. He is still some of the aspects of old Robbie Ray are still very much lurking within current Robbie Ray, but he's got upside. So he's number 2 for me. I think he's a good option. Glasnow would be number 3 for tonight. So to me, Bassett and Ray are 1 and 2. Glasnow is number 3. I would be higher on Glasnow, but he's similar to Ray in that he is letting up a lot of hard contact, a lot of fly balls, and he's actually walking more guys than Ray is right now. So that's why I think the risk is higher. He's also facing the Yankees. Better team than what Ray has with the Marlins. So that's why I put Glasnow behind Ray for tonight, but I would still consider Glasnow. You're not going to write off a guy with a 34% strikeout rate, no matter what the batted ball data may look like. He can still go bananas. So to me, it's Bassett 1, Ray 2, Glasnow 3 for today as far as ranking the starting pitchers for this one. Also do want to note, quick change, if you follow the sheet that I use here, I know some of you will look at it and stuff like that. The sheet I have here, I've changed. This used to be barrel percentage allowed by starting pitchers. I've changed that to be hard hit rate allowed and fly ball rate allowed, kind of taking the 2 components that form a barrel and splitting them apart. A hard hit ball is any ball with an exit velocity of 95 miles per hour or higher. That's according to Baseball Savant. So that is what this number is. Fly ball rate, very simple. I was looking at trying to decipher what led to a high ERA this year, and there was a higher correlation between hard hit rate and ERA than barrel rate, and there's actually a higher correlation between fly ball rate and ERA than barrel rate, which is kind of weird. So I've decided to take barrel rate off the sheet, going with hard hit rate and fly ball rate. Now I will mention, this is very confusing, but there are 2 separate hard hit rates on this sheet. You'll see the batting hard hit rate for each team is a different number. This is the Fangraphs hard percentage, which you can find, I think that's via Baseball Info Solutions. It's a different number. It's a different thing. But you can't, as of now at least, get handedness splits for hard hit rate and stuff like that on Fangraphs for Baseball Savant. So once we get split data, we can see a hard hit rate versus righties and versus lefties, then I will go to having both and be congruent so they can mash up really well. For right now, though, working with what we got. So there are different hard hit rates on the sheet. Just did want to note that. It's very confusing, but hopefully the colors make it easier to figure out. You can kind of see relative to where people are, but that is, didn't want to change that. That is the explanation for why the sheet has changed for today. Let's start the questions off over on Facebook and talk to DJ. DJ is asking if Sandy Alcantara is worth using for tonight. I like Sandy Alcantara. I think he's a very good pitcher. I will not be using him for tonight because of his matchup, not because of him. Alcantara, if it were just based on starting pitcher quality, very good pitcher. 3.55 skill interactive ERA. This is over his past 5 starts with more changeups. 3.55 skill interactive ERA, 25% strikeout rate. He's a good pitcher. The Blue Jays are also good, though. 113 WRC plus, 22% strikeout rates. Really good offense. It's not a great park for hitting for tonight because the temperature is 65 degrees, but it's still a tough scenario. So to me, I'm okay passing over Alcantara for tonight and going back to him when he has a better matchup in the very near future. Kyle, thoughts on Dodgers and Astros stacks? I think both of them are viable for today. I prefer the Astros. They're facing Garrett Richards, and Richards is someone who I haven't stacked against a lot this year, mostly because he's been doing a good job of keeping hitters on the ground. I think it's like a 48% ground ball rate. You can see here a 31% fly ball rate against Richards, but he's letting up some hard contact, balls being struck decently well. and doesn't get a lot of strikeouts, does walk some guys, tough match with the Astros. So the Astros, to me, I think are a decent stack and a decent way to burn excess salary, which you will likely have for tonight, given the other stacks I like for today. Dodgers facing John Gant. Gant is a ground ball pitcher. You see here a 25% ground ball or fly ball rate, 34% hard hit rate allowed. So he's actually good in both batted ball departments, whereas Richards is good in just one. So to me, if I'm choosing between the two, I would go Astros over Dodgers. I think the Dodgers are viable, but they're not a priority stack for me for today. I'm not going to talk anyone out of them, again, because they will get base runners for tonight, but I think the higher upside option is the Astros, given that Richards does let up more fly balls and more hard contact than Gant does. Let's go back to YouTube and talk to Diffuse. Which team would you look to be more overweight on in Coors and why? So that would, when we talk about being overweight, it is relative to consensus. And I'm guessing Coors won't be as popular tonight as usual because both offenses are pretty bad. And you can see here the total is 9.5. That's pretty low for a Coors slate. So I would bet that people wind up being higher on the Rockies for today. I think that is fair. Dane Dunning has done a really good job of getting ground balls recently. His fly ball rate against just 21% over his past 6 starts with more changeups. That's a really good number, but he hasn't gotten great results. And I think that those lackluster results probably will stick around. So I think the Rockies are the better stack between the two. I'm okay being underweight on the Rangers just because I think German Marquez is a really good pitcher. He has a 26% strikeout rate in this time, doesn't let up ground ball or fly balls, doesn't let up hard contact. He's a very good pitcher. The Rangers are the better offense and what I prefer between the two, but the Rockies, I think, are the better matchup. So I think I'll likely wind up being in line with consensus here. I think the Rockies are the better stack. I don't think they're a great stack by any means, which is why they were not at the top of my list this morning. But I do think that they're the better stack between the two. So I'm guessing that will be similar to other people's thoughts on these two teams, but I'm okay with that. I think that's the right way to play things for tonight. Alvin, do you like the A's or the Giants as a stack? Yeah, the A's I've been growing more fond of as the day has gone on. The Giants are... Do I have the Giants on my sheet? Oh, yeah, they're facing Heaney. Okay. No, I don't like the Giants against Heaney. He does let up a lot of fly balls and hard contact, but also gets a lot of strikeouts. So I'm okay avoiding that, especially because it is the coolest game on the slate by a wide margin. So no Giants for me, given the strikeout rate and the temperature, but I will have the A's. They're facing Marco Gonzalez, who's coming off the injured list. He's been out for a while now. He didn't make a rehab start in AAA, which was kind of weird. But he did pitch a simulated game. So usually when a guy's coming out the injury list, I like to look at what they did in that rehab stint. Like a lot of times they'll be dominant because they're facing guys who are not major leaguers and stuff like that. So it is a little bit of a downgrade not to have that data for Gonzalez here because he pitched just a sim game and not a rehab game. But in the time before his injury, Gonzalez was letting up a lot of fly balls and a lot of hard contact, wasn't getting a lot of strikeouts. He was walking guys. It's very possible that he has improved. You know, maybe he's on the injury list for a reason. Maybe it was something, it says it's his forearm. Maybe the issue he was having has been corrected and Gonzalez coming back from the injury will be better than Gonzalez before the injury. That's very possible. That's why the A's are not going to be near the top of my list. But if we get Gonzalez back to where he was pre-injury, that's going to bode pretty well for the A's. Again, you see these numbers here, really red. That bodes well for Oakland. Good team versus lefties with a 114 WRC plus. And it is a little bit warmer in Seattle for tonight. I couldn't tell. I couldn't find a reading and if they'd have the roof open for today. It appears it'll be open. 77 degrees, actually kind of warm for tonight's slate. So I think that's a good thing. And to me, add it all together, and it says the A's are actually not too bad. I'm not going to put them above the Twins because I feel better about the matchup for the Twins. I think I'll still keep the Royals ahead of them too, despite Adalberto Mondesi not being in the lineup for today, and despite Will Crowe being decent with his batted ball numbers. I'm still going to be okay using those two teams, but the A's to me wind up being in a similar realm to like the Astros and to the Rockies, where I like them a decent amount, and I'm okay getting there for sure, given there's a possibility that Gonzalez is not as good as he was prior to the injury. Let's go back to Facebook and talk to DJ. DJ is asking about Michael Pineda. Michael Pineda is facing the Orioles for today. The Orioles, pretty good matchup for righties. The reason I'm not going to be super high here is that Pineda does let up a lot of risky contact. He has a 40% hard hit rate allowed, a 46% fly ball rate allowed. Both those numbers are worse than average. His strikeout rate not as good as a guy like Heaney. It's a warmer temperature for today. I think the Orioles probably better than their WRC plus lead you to believe, because they've had some guys who have missed some time due to injuries. So if we get in if you look at the guys actually in the lineup, Freddie Galvis is playing good this year. Anthony Santander is tremendous. Cedric Mullins playing really well. I think it's a tougher matchup than it seems at first glance for Pineda. So to me, I do think that Pineda is probably not going to be super high on my list for today. Honestly, no value plays are super high on my list. I'm okay using Luis Garcia facing the Red Sox because he gets a lot of strikeouts, but it is risky, as you can see here. Does let up some risky contact. The Red Sox, a very good team. The reason I can see it is because he has a 32% strikeout rate over his past 5 starts with fewer changeups, and the Red Sox don't walk much against righties. They do strike out, so there is a path to a good game there for Garcia, which is why I'm willing to use him, but I can't be super high on it just because there's a possibility it goes very wrong given the batted ball numbers and the matchup. Let's go over to Jerry. Good day, Jim. Good day, Jerry. What do you think about this stack? Chicago, Minnesota, mix of Houston and a Baltimore player or two. That's probably spread out a bit too thin. For me, my ideal matchup or my ideal lineup is having just 2 teams. Like if I get 2 4-player stacks, sweet, I'm good to go. If it's like a 4-3-1, like 4 players from one team, 3 from another, and 1 from one team, like a one-off, fine. I like that too. But having 4 different teams in one lineup to me is a little bit too spread out. Let's talk about some of the individual stacks in there for Jerry and try to whittle this list down. I do like Minnesota quite a bit, facing Bruce Zimmerman, a guy who doesn't get a lot of strikeouts, does let up some hard contact. I think that bodes well for the Twins. So I like the Twins aspect there, Jerry. Chicago would have to be the Cubs because I think the White Sox are not on the main slate. Facing Ryan Weathers, I've grown on the Cubs as the day has gone along. So let's look at Ryan Weathers here. I'm pretty sure he has a low ERA, and I'm pretty sure he had a really nice start last week. However, some of the more advanced stats on Weathers are things we can stack against. You see here, his expected ERA is 4.71, letting up hard contact, not getting a ton of ground balls, not getting a ton of strikeouts, and his swing and strike rate is low. So I actually do like the Chicago Cubs. Didn't talk about them this morning, but I'm growing on them as the day goes along. So I'm on board with both Minnesota and Chicago. And honestly, Jerry, I think you could just whittle it down to just those 2 teams and feel pretty good about things. As mentioned before, I do like Houston. Probably not stacking Baltimore, despite mentioning that I'm not really on Pineda as a pitcher. It's more so I don't want to use Pineda than I do want to stack against him. So Jerry, I'd rank those options. Probably Minnesota, then Houston, then Chicago. But I think all those 3 options all broadly very good, but I would whittle things down and try to make it a bit more concentrated on just a couple of teams. DJ, Cincinnati stack or Kansas City stack? And do you like Boyd in Milwaukee or keep riding with Bassett versus Seattle? So Cincinnati is facing Aaron Nola. I have no interest there. Aaron Nola is a tremendous pitcher, does a good job of everything. So no Reds for me at all. KC, yes, I do like them. Again, despite Mondesi being out, I still think that there are enough good guys to use there. Edward Olivares is batting 5th for them. He is a guy who has a couple sources of upside, can steal some bases, has some power, played pretty well last year as well, but I think that he's interesting here, batting 5th. I like Salvador Perez more than others do. Santana's been great this year, so I would say Santana, Perez, Olivares. I think all those guys grade out pretty well. So the Royals are a team I do like for today. I will not get to Matthew Boyd. I have seen some buzz from smart people on Matthew Boyd for today, so this could be a bad take from me, but it's been a long sample where he has not been converting some of the underlying stuff into strikeouts. This is over a 10-start sample for Boyd his full season, 20% strikeout rate. He's allowed a lot of fly balls. Like, he's been better with his contact suppression this year than he has been in the past, but he's still not good at it, and his strikeout rate's too low. So definitely not in on Matthew Boyd. Personally, again, there are smart people who are talking about Boyd. It could pay off for today. But for me, I'm not going to be doing it personally. Not there myself. And then the other question was keep riding Bassett in Seattle. Yeah, I like Bassett a lot. Mentioned before, he's my top guy for tonight. So between those guys, definitely Bassett for me. Let's go to Twitch and talk to Yosh. No interest in Lauer. I think that's a pitch count thing. He went 85 pitches back on May 26th. They are generally okay not letting their starters go super deep into games because they've got such a good bullpen. So my assumption for tonight is that Eric Lauer is probably not going to go very deep into the game. The Tigers have been getting better versus lefties. They're still pretty bad. But Lauer, not a super high strikeout guy. I don't think it's I'm definitely not second against him. I think Eric Lauer is pretty good. But I think it's a pitch count thing for me that kind of sours me on Lauer. Lauer. There we go. I just don't think he necessarily has I don't think he can get a 60 burger, whereas I think that Bassett can. I think that Ray can for sure. I think that Glasnow can. I don't think that Lauer is someone who can necessarily do that. And I think that Garcia is probably someone who has better ability to do that. You see here the strikeout numbers for Lauer, 3, 7, and 6 in his 3 starts this year. Pitch counts for Lauer, yeah. I mean, he did go 91, but I don't see enough there from Lauer to be convinced that he has upside. So to me, I'm okay being a bit lower on that one and not being in on Eric Lauer for tonight. Let's take a look here at other stuff. Try to find some other things we have not discussed too in depth so far. Talked about the Twins before as being my favorite stack right now. Facing Zimmerman, and the Twins lineup is out. So let's actually build this here and actually plug in some guys. I'm going to go Bassett as a pitcher because it's going to give us a lot of flexibility. I do like the upside that he has there. I think the floor is pretty good too. Twins lineup is in. I saw Jorge Polanco's batting lower than I thought he would, so bit of a bummer there. We have Nelson Cruz, $3,500. I like that for sure. Josh Donaldson is $2,800. Good with that. So let's put those guys in first. Then let's go over here to the Twins. Numbers versus lefties this year. Mitch Garver, 42% hard hit rate, 49% fly ball rate, 321 ISO. Yeah, he's striking out a lot, so not ideal there, but I don't care. Zimmerman, not a big strikeout guy, so let's put Garver in there. Then let's dig into Kirilloff. And with Kirilloff, we're going to have a small sample versus lefties because he's new to the big leagues, hasn't had a lot of time to build up a sample versus lefties. In that small sample of 21 plate appearances, high strikeout rate, low walk rate, that tells me he's probably not seeing the ball super well against lefties. So I'm okay skipping over Kirilloff for today. I think that the strikeout's a little bit too concerning for me to feel super great about him there. So no Kirilloff. Garlic, though, has good power numbers, a lower strikeout rate. Miguel Sano, 34% strikeout rate versus lefties. Let's check out his game logs here because Sano is someone where I don't care as much about platoon splits. I care more about is he striking out right now? Because Sano, when he's not seeing the ball well, nothing will go well for him. So checking out the strikeout numbers for him here. Yeah, so the number I've been looking at with Sano traditionally is from the 14th on, because he had a day off there. So let's group this here and check out the 14th on. Back up to a 39% strikeout rate. That's pretty high. Plate discipline data for him. Let's go to the plate discipline numbers here on pitch info to see how often he's chasing in that time, see how well he's seeing the ball. If we look at that, 22% chase rate, that's in line with his regular numbers. His contact rate is 64%. That has come down from where it was, but it's still better than it was previously. So I think Sano is an option, but I don't think he's a priority for me. So honestly, I think what I might do with the Twins is go with Garlic over Sano, go with this stack of Donaldson, Cruz, Garlic, Garver, the top 4 guys in the order. 3,500 left. That means I can stack the Astros pretty easily, or honestly anyone. So I think that's probably the way I'd be turning for the Twins for today. Jerry, Toronto is a hot team. What do you think about Guerrero, Bichette, and Gurriel against Miami? No. Again, Alcantara is really good. I understand chasing hot teams, but a lot of times that doesn't account for matchups. Like maybe they faced a lot of rough pitches recently. Alcantara is not that. This is over his past 5 starts with more changeups, a 25% fly ball rate allowed. That's a low number, and Alcantara's been good all year. So to me, I would say no Blue Jays personally, despite the fact they have been good recently. Alvin, top 3 or 4 stacks for single entry for today. I want to play single entry for tonight because I feel pretty good about Bassett. So I think that in that situation, I do want to kind of zero in on a pitcher for me. So to me, I'm trying to decide what I want to do for stacking. I think the Twins will be near the top of that list. Again, Zimmerman, things grade out pretty well for them. Good team against lefties. They are platoon conscious, where they will put their better hitters towards the top of the order versus lefties. And I think that I'm okay being in on the Twins here. As far as number 2, like if I'm going Twins and Bassett, like it might wind up being the Astros against Garrett Richards because they're a good team. I can definitely get to them from a salary perspective for today. Richards does let up hard contact, doesn't get a lot of strikeouts, should let up base runners. So Astros are there. I think the Cubs are probably sliding up that list too, just because, again, I've got the salary to burn because we're not using much of pitcher. The Twins, decently low salary too. So I can stack the good players on the Cubs and feel pretty good about it. So Cubs would probably be up there. And then I think I'm probably looking at the A's as well as being a single entry stack against Gonzalez. That does mean that I'm lower on the Royals and the Rockies than I was this morning. But part of the reason there is I just don't need the salary difference that I needed this morning because I feel like I don't know. I feel like I've grown more fond of the Astros. And so to me, if I'm locking in the Twins as one of my stacks, I'm okay glossing over the Rockies and the Royals as the second one. To me, it'd be like Astros or Cubs as the highest salaried stack, or potentially the A's there as well. I do think that the Rockies are fine, though. CJ Cron, Ryan McMahon, Ryan Altapia, all those guys are guys with upside. Same with Blackman. I know that, again, Dunning has been getting a lot of ground balls recently, but I do still think the Rockies are in play. So I would choose a value stack, whether it be the Twins, Royals, or Rockies, and then choose a high salaried stack being the Astros, the A's, or the Cubs, and play it that way. So I can kind of sort out the way you want to do them there. I think I'd probably go Twins and Astros personally, but there are different options. You've got one value stack and one higher salaried one. Clinton, thoughts on Alvarez coming off of a wrist injury? Wrist is a word that is always really scary because it's one of those like checklist injuries that can drag down a hitter even if they come back. So I would say it's a little bit scary, but batting fourth, good lineup, good situation for tonight. I would say I'm okay with using him despite the fact that it is a little bit risky. Favorite shortstop one-offs. This is from Diffuse over on YouTube. Let's go to shortstop here. I do think that Polanco is a good option at shortstop if you need to find a guy with a little bit of a lower salary. Okay. The Nationals are facing Max Fried. Fried does a good job of loading hard contacts. No Trey Turner there. Bichette is facing Alcantara as a Semien. Javier Baez probably being a good option there. He's been striking out a ton still, but like that's just kind of the way things go for him. So that is something you have to deal with. I think that Correa works as well. Where is he hitting? I had the lineup up there before. He's bad in second. So Carlos Correa is up there too. I think that I would be down for that. Those are probably the main ones for me. I would say Correa, I would say Baez and Polanco, depending on what kind of salary you have to allocate towards that position. Do you think about the Alcantara that the Cubs brought up? No, I do not. Let's pull up the Cubs lineup here. Sergio Alcantara. Okay, let's pull up his Fangraphs page and go through the process I would go through for anyone who is a recent call-up and decide how we would handle them based on their minor league numbers. For me, the minor league numbers that matter are isolated slugging, stolen bases, strikeout rate. Those are the things that I want to look at for minor leaguers. For Alcantara, we do have 79 plate appearances, does have some speed, 3 stolen bases, 131 ISO. That's pretty low. Not the lowest strikeout rate. So I would guess that he winds up profiling as being someone who has like not the best upside. So I think that especially with him batting 8th, I think in front of a pitcher. Yep, 8th in front of a pitcher for today. I'm okay not going to him yet. Maybe he is down the line, but as of right now, I'm okay not chasing him just yet. Let's go back over to YouTube and talk to Alvin. Favorite bats out of the Astros lineup. Let's pull up the Astros here, check out their numbers versus righties, and see how we want to prioritize them from a stacking perspective for today. I'm guessing Carlos Correa will be towards the top of my list, as he always is. Let's check out the rest here before we dive in. Bregman, Alvarez, Gurriel, Tucker, Altuve. Okay, so basically it's it's pretty similar to what we would usually have here for them. So let's sort here by plate appearances versus righties. Correa, awesome numbers. He's going to be number 1 for me. I always love Carlos Correa. Kyle Tucker been heating back up recently. He's got good results versus righties, 5 stolen bases. He's batting 6th, which means he's below Gurriel, but I very much prefer Tucker to Gurriel for today. Alex Bregman, not the highest fly ball rate this year, not a ton of power, not stealing bases. That's kind of annoying. Altuve, 190 ISO, not stealing either, but also not striking out. So Alvarez, good power numbers. So I'm going to be okay with him. Let's see if we can find any updates on how he's feeling. So do you want to see how much time he's missed? Just because like that can influence things. Again, risks are kind of scary. Missed a decent amount of time. So that's a little bit scary too. Did struggle when he was out there trying to play through it. So it's definitely an issue, but they've held him out long enough maybe where he can be okay. So if I'm ranking Astros bats for today, I'm going to go Correa 1. Let's actually get rid of this twin stack here and build out a quick Astros 1 really fast. We had 3,500 left per batter after building up the twin stack. So let's pull up the Astros here with that in mind. I can never find where teams are on this thing because it's chronological order and I have no idea what time games start. Okay, Carlos Correa, let's put him in. I do want to put Alvarez in there, and I do want to put Tucker in there as well. And then we've got plenty of salary left to pick either Altuve or Bregman. I'm probably leaning Altuve just because the power numbers have been so good for him. So I think that's where I'd likely go, but it'd be between those two guys. So to me, Altuve, Bregman, they're in consideration. To me, I think that Correa and Tucker, despite the fact that they're not like, as big names as other guys, but I do think that they would be the top 2 I'd prioritize for tonight. Russell, I haven't spoken about the Rays offense tonight versus Herman and the Yankees. Yeah, Herman's done a good job of limiting hard contact. A 30% hard hit rate allowed over his past 6 starts with more sinkers. So I'm okay being low on the Rays for tonight. Herman trending up with the increased sinker usage and the decreased fly ball rate. That is all the time that we have here for today on the FanDuel Fantasy Q&A. We are back once again tomorrow, 4 o'clock, to talk MLB. We'll be here on Thursday as well to talk MLB. Make sure you are subscribed to the FanDuel YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, or Twitter page. And also, if you're watching on YouTube, hit that like button. We appreciate those of you who have done so already. Also, check out the solo shot every weekday morning at 9 a.m. on the FanDuel YouTube page and up on the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed immediately after that. If you have more questions for me, I am on Twitter at Jim Sannes, JimSannes. Big thank you to Brandon Gdula for the lead-in for today, talking some PGA for this week's event at the Memorial Tournament. Big thank you to Calvin Theobald, our video producer, for running the video side of things here today. Thank you, Cal, as always. And thank you to everyone for tuning in. Good luck to you for tonight. We'll talk to you once again tomorrow. This has been the FanDuel Fantasy Q&A.